by trimming characters and set and its character set white space. Wow.
Yeah, it's easy. Right?
Try to remember.
Well, this part was easy.
That should be a quiz question. Don't get it wrong.
Yeah, this part's not a big deal. I mean, that's fine. String by trimming characters and set, giving it what character set it is. That part's not a problem. The problem was this guy. Substring from index, giving it start index to advanced by 1. Yeah, that's stupid. All right,
Just make a bloody
why don't they just make a bloody?
substring. You know the bloody.
I thought you were in Italy last year, not Britain.
Italy like 2 years ago.
Yeah, so is this like Doctor Who hangover?
Oh yeah. No, I actually didn't watch that show.
You don't watch Doctor Who? Really? It's a great show.
I can't get over the fact.
You don't like it?
Looks like it's from the
I was
1980s.
hella into it, and then I realized it shouldn't be.
I was hella into it. Really? Why'd you stop? Like, did it get bad?
It's way too fanboy for me.
Yeah, the fandom is pretty bad.
Like even
I'm not like freaking out at it. Like,
Well, no, like the people that do watch the show are just like the super. They're worse than Harry Potter fans.
but it's
I
similar.
would say that Doctor Who probably has the like largest, like the worst fan base, and not like worse as in like bad, but worse as in like way too into it.
Like the Harry Potter like fan base,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
thing. But does the fan base translate into the show? Is that, or is it just leave a bad taste in your mouth because you know the fan base is there?
Anytime you say anything remotely criticizing the show, you just get destroyed.
Really? Oh.
I can't stand the fact that the show was
It's too bad Levi's not here because he's one of those people.
Well,
I
I mean,
used to be one of those people.
well, I mean, I'm a big fan of the show, but I mean, I don't really care enough about it to, like, when something is like off, like if they do something in the show that kind of breaks. So what's the word? Canon.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm not losing sleep over it. We'll just kind of.
What was that Star Wars thing with the nosebleed? Like, there was some canon about that, and he just went off on you in one of the classes.
Really? What was that?
He was talking about some Star Wars canon or something, and like you were having like a 5-minute discussion with him about it, and he was just not happy.
Was it about lightsabers and how I believe they're real?
Don't think it was that.
You believe they're real?
Yeah, why not?
I think it was something
Somebody
on the
else has
books, and
one,
he's just
or-
like, this canon.
You think they're like a hidden stock of lightsabers somewhere, or you think they're possible?
Maybe all of those.
All of those. I can see them being possible, but I don't think.
I don't even know if I can see them being possible, so maybe the first two. I don't think they're possible, but we definitely have a hidden stock of them. Definitely. All right, so kind of the thing I want to show you today is two separate pieces. We'll come back and do our fight with our whatever call it, our strings later on. But at this point, our application lives entirely on our phone, right? And we've all heard of cloud computing. Okay, well, what does that mean to you? When somebody says cloud computing, what are they talking about?
Virtual machine with a special name.
Virtual machine with a special name. All right, that doesn't really tell me hardly anything.
You send your problems to a server that solves your problems. And this
Okay, so something else somewhere else that's dealing with our data and our computing, or some of our data and some of our computing, or something like that. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't have to be a virtual machine, I guess is the thing. It could be a real machine.
90%. Well, okay.
It could be a real machine sitting somewhere, right? But punchline is that it's not this machine. So if we want something to happen off of this machine, we need to have an access to another machine. Now, from a mobile application perspective, what types of things would we usually want to happen off of this machine?
Well, in terms of games, you want to keep a lot of that data off of the phone.
Okay.
So you can, mess with it.
Okay, so, well, several different, so you mentioned data,
Yeah,
right?
security.
So data, so if this phone gets crushed, I haven't lost stuff. That's one thing, right? So, right now we've been using NS user defaults in here to kind of save things between runs of our application. And that's great and even necessary in situations where we don't have an internet connection, which is less and less often anymore, right? But would you agree that, for instance, right now, if our app got deleted from our watch and got deleted from our phone, we've lost all of our historical roles and all of the roles that we've built up and saved, which would just be devastating. Right?
No, unless it used to drawing things.
Okay, that would just be a devastating thing. So it would be nice if we had our stuff backed up in the cloud. Right? So the idea of cloud computing really kind of spans two different things, I guess. Let's kind of pop open our presentation dealy flippy majiggy thingy. All right, so we got cloud computing. So usually cloud computing platforms have something called a compute engine and something called a data store. They might have some other things in there as well, but those are the two kind of main things we talk about in terms of cloud computing. What cloud computing platforms have you heard of?
Amazon, Azure, Google.
So, examples. So we have Amazon Web Services. Okay, and that comes in the form of S3 and then their Elastic Cloud and a couple other things, right? That stuff. You said Azure, Microsoft Azure?
Azure, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Whatever, that guy. Then you mentioned Google App Engine.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Does Apple have one too, I'm guessing?
They don't.
Really?
At least not yet.
It's actually surprising.
My favorite one isn't being represented here. You know, yeah, Parse. Yeah, so parse.com. Really?
Yep.
Oh, you're about to hear of it in here. It's
Oh,
really,
God.
it's really good. But let's put these in context before I show you that I'm a Parse fanboy just as much as the Harry Potter and the Doctor Who people. Okay. I would totally watch a Dalek spin-off show.
Really?
Wouldn't that be good? Like literally a show completely centered around like
just terrible exterminate sound. I can't stand it when I hear that. It's like
that was actually a funny thing when I got into watching the show, I guess last year sometime. And my wife likes it now too, which actually is relatively decent evidence, so maybe the show isn't that good.
Oh man.
I mean, my wife has a long history. Like whenever there's something at the grocery store that she likes, like some frozen dinner or something like that, they discontinue it. Yeah, so basically, and I'm going to say this out loud, basically she has bad taste, and I've been married to her for 15 years. So that doesn't say a whole lot about her picking of me, right? But in any case, what was I just talking about? Fanboy, Doctor Who, Dalek. Oh, the funny thing, last year when I got into the Doctor Who I was messing around with these things we got from the hackathons called Spark Cores. We're going to be looking at them a little bit in 325 next semester, building some hardware stuff. Well, so I wanted to make something. So my cat, who I've given a whole second personality to, and she's a vampire and she craves the blood of the living. She has all this backstory. And you can follow her on Facebook. You can find out what her occupation is. She works the corner. She's Amish. Yes. Her education is the mean streets. So in any case, she likes the Daleks because she watched the show. And she's really mean too. So she does try to exterminate. Well, I built this little thing that had a little sound recorder on it that played the sound exterminate, and I did it on a light sensor. So my wife gets up, and the thing is that Gracie often sits at the end of our bed or lays on my face while I'm in bed, and I'm allergic to cats. Also true story. So my eyes swell shut. But in any case, so it was a light sensor. So I built this where when my wife walked past it, Gracie and I hid it under the bed. And when you break the light, it does the exterminate, and so 3 in the morning, my wife comes walking around the foot of the bed, breaks the light path, the thing goes off, Gracie was actually sleeping near it and got the crap scared out of her. So she was gone. My wife yelled at me. So I don't even understand why.
I'm sure you thought it was hilarious.
It was hilarious. It was so funny. Okay, so these guys, and coming up here, this next slide might fall into the category of a good quiz question. Just heads up, FYI. Cloud computing platforms come in two flavors. IaaS and PaaS. Anybody know the difference between these?
He's not wrong.
All right.
So how do you pay?
So this first one is infrastructure as a service. And this guy is platform as a service. That's the AAS, as a service. All right, so infrastructure and platform as a service. Differences. Infrastructure as a service provides the computational, well, let's just say provides the actual, provides access to the actual hardware, giving maximum flexibility with maximum complexity, or with higher complexity, let's say. PaaS provides an API for working with the cloud hardware, giving limited flexibility, because you have to do it their way. You have to solve all your problems in terms of what the API exposes, with lower complexity. All right, examples of these guys. IaaS, this is Amazon Web Services. PaaS, this is everybody else. Microsoft Azure.
Is it really pronounced that way?
Azure? I don't know.
Azure.
I don't know. They're probably all reasonably, I mean, I assume the way I say it's correct.
Of course.
So Microsoft Azure sounds right. That kind of rolls off the tongue.
But
That's
not, it's a color, and that's not how the color is pronounced.
Well,
What?
maybe they're just a special
The color.
snowflake like Apple.
Yeah, I mean, technically.
Azure's a color?
Not when you say it that way, it's not.
I mean, technically, you know, it's their name.
I thought that was the name of one of the chicks on American Gladiator.
I have no idea.
Wow.
So that show's not still on, is it?
What is that show?
So.
You don't remember? Oh man, American Gladiator was a show that was kind of the precursor, by precursor, the precursor in terms of years, and that's measured in decades, before like American Ninja Warrior. So there was like
the heroes or stuff, whatever, the gladiators. And
yeah. So they had like normal people, and you would go up against the gladiators. So female contestants would go up against the female gladiators. Were just like these ripped, ripped ladies, and then the male would go up against the male gladiators who were ripped, and all sorts of different like head-to-head competition things. And I think one of the female gladiators, her name was what was it? How do you say it?
I say Azure.
Azure. That just sounds creepy.
It sounds like
Well, look at the word. It's like the. I don't know how you're where you're getting your pronunciation. Like if you break it down, the way it should be pronounced.
I think you're full of shit.
What do you mean if you break it down? Name one other word that starts with an A and the second letter is a Z.
Okay, look at the back half. It's lure. It's
Aztec.
boom roasted.
Aztec, Azure.
Azure.
Here. No.
YouTube.
Oh.
Azure.
Azure.
Bam.
Who agrees with me? Is this like Google Translate or something?
Pronunciation book on YouTube.
78,000 views. Legit.
See?
Doesn't mean it's right. Anybody has to be-
No, what means it's right is the fact that I said it. Christian worldview.
The only thing is whether it's Azure or Azure. So it's only dependent on where you put the stress. It's either Azure or Azure.
Who's this is like Microsoft's pronunciation guide.
This is like English of Stack Overflow.
Okay, so what you're really saying is I am right.
It could be either.
Right, but it could be either the way I say it or pretty much the way I say it. It's kind of what you're getting at here.
Apparently, you pronounce it the British English way.
Yeah, you pronounce it like in the UK.
Because you say the Z without the H sound.
Azure.
So you're
Azure.
wrong because this is America.
Azure.
Azure.
No, without the H sound.
I don't think you remember how you pronounce it.
I don't even know anymore. How do you pronounce it? Microsoft Azure. That's how I say it. Microsoft Azure.
I think you were saying it a little bit different.
I may have
I think
been.
you said it something
I'm not trying to say it. I'm not trying to say it differently. All right, shut up. It's Microsoft Azure. All right, so these other guys and Parse are platform as a service. So this is really an API that gets provided to us that gives us a communication channel with the magical cloud. All right, and we have to solve our problems in terms of that API. Much easier entry point for us, but we do have less flexibility. With Amazon Web Services, effectively what you get, have any of you ever used Amazon Web Services? All right, so I can make stuff up and you wouldn't even know?
I've heard enough about it, but I'm scared to even go close to it. So.
At the end of the day, Amazon Web Services effectively gives you a Linux box. Okay, it is a virtualized Linux box. So from your perspective, you have your own Linux server that you can configure however you want. Now, this Linux server is actually plugged into their back end, which they have all this elastic. They call everything for them is called the elastic cloud. And what it ultimately does is, as you demand more and more power, more and more horsepower, more and more memory, more and more storage from your Linux box, automatically behind the scenes, it grows in computational capacity. All right, that's what it effectively does. From your perspective, you're managing a Linux server. But the reality is it's a Linux server that is infinitely, quote, infinitely elastic, as opposed to you go out and you get a machine that you have at home, you throw Linux on it, and that's going to be able to handle, one user up to maybe 20 or 30 or something like that. But much beyond that, you're going to start having slowdowns. Amazon, for a price, will allow you to basically have as many instances as you might need. You can go in and tune your control panel on there and say the maximum copies of my server that I want to have at any point in time is X. Something like that. Or you can set a budget where don't charge me more than this on a daily basis. So basically kill off my application if it's going to cost me more than this, that kind of stuff. But you get ultimate ultimate flexibility to do basically whatever you want because you don't have to play by their API's rules. It's a server, you can put whatever you want on there, and as the demands increase, the server can become more powerful if you're willing to pay for it. On the fly. You don't have to request that they move you over to a more powerful server. The other guys basically just do this stuff for you automatically. Now, having said that, you mentioned, there's actually a very, very, very famous application that uses Amazon Web Services that most of you in here use.
Is it Amazon?
Probably. Other than Amazon. Is it Amazon?
Doesn't 90% of the web use AWS?
No.
I think Amazon owns
I
huge percentage of the cloud market.
That's what I thought.
It's
Well, hold on, but you say 90% of the web. That's assuming that the
cloud market.
Well, okay, so that comes down to, who's using the cloud. Where's the cloud really come into play? And that comes back to this thing where, this thing. What is cloud computing? from our perspective, most consumer level applications care about storing data. The cloud computing, the enterprise level cloud computing stuff is probably more about computation, or at least more half and half. But how many of you watch Netflix?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Netflix uses Amazon Web Services, which is actually kind of ironic now that Netflix, that Amazon is doing video streaming as they're trying to create a competing product. Becomes interesting because there's probably some sort of contractual agreement they have where maybe Amazon can't as easily do this as it sounds, but what keeps Amazon from just turning off Netflix? So whenever
Well,
you...
they did. Amazon stopped selling
Contracts,
all of the
lawyers,
other,
huge
like
lawsuits.
Chromecast, Apple TV. They stopped selling them on Amazon.
Right, that's just other ways of digesting Netflix.
They said it was because they didn't want to confuse their customers, thinking that their competition was like their own products or something like that.
Yeah, fair enough. But, punchline is whenever you watch a show on Netflix, it's streaming from Amazon S3, their storage servers. So, kind of interesting thing. But in general, from our perspective, we're not writing, scientific simulation tools on our smartphones and even consumer type applications. We're mostly writing crap where we'd like to have user accounts stored off the device so that passwords aren't on here. We're storing stuff so that if our phone dies, we can, reinstall the game and pick up where we left off. That kind of stuff, right? Things aren't just locally stored in the device, it's stored someplace else. So from our perspective, cloud computing is much more about a database, okay? Now, several of you are in the database class right now, right? Okay, so my guess is most of what you've been talking about in there is relational databases, what, MySQL, that kind of stuff. Have you talked about data stores at all? Okay, so have you guys talked about object-oriented databases?
Yes.
Okay, and kind of how they failed? All right. Data stores are the rebirth of object-oriented databases.
Oh.
All right. So object-oriented databases came out. They were originally talked about when object-oriented programming was popular, right? Problem was that people were ready for object-oriented programming because they saw the need for it, but relational databases were doing an okay job, so nobody really saw the need of moving over to this whole new paradigm of storing information. Most cloud computing data stores use an object model and then try to duplicate relatively closely the SQL query model, because that's what we really care about with our databases, right? Can we query at the level of complexity we need for the type of data we're working with? Can I get all of the high scores for people for game XYZ or something like that? All right. So those are our examples. Two flavors: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. Platform as a service is going to be much more user-friendly. I could certainly see that Amazon Web Services has a majority of the, let's call it, enterprise true cloud computing market, because you do have full flexibility to do whatever you want with their infrastructure, as opposed to this guy that says, here's what we'll let you do, have at it.
Azure gives you actual VMs if you want.
Right, but you still have to use their API to talk to stuff. Sure you do. Yeah, you do.
You can remote desktop in.
No, you can. But if you're going to use any of their expansion things, you have to use their API. You don't get the control you have on Amazon's side.
True.
It's maybe fair enough to say it's closer to Amazon than these other guys, but I mean, the fact that Windows gives you a remote desktop, Windows is barely an operating system, so it's...
Whoa. Shots fired.
What was I talking about? Oh, so let's go ahead. And I'm going to go over to parse.com. So this is the site. I'm going to go ahead and log into my account on here. So all of you will want to go and create an account on here at some point soon.
Want to or have to?
Well, if you want to be able to do your homework, you'll have to.
So one.
Let's see. Nailed it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new app. And we're going to call this guy, what do we call it, just Dice Roller? Dice Roller Watch or something? We'll call it Dice Roller Watch. We'll go ahead and hit create. So now we have this new project on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, we're actually going to learn two different things here. We're going to also learn about another product called CocoaPods. Any of you ever heard of that?
I see it all the time.
Okay, so let's go back here. Pretty commonly today, we have package management tools that allow us to kind of manage the installation of stuff. We're already all used to this when we have updates on Windows or updates on the Mac that automatically keeps our operating system up to date, and any third-party applications we have on there that are kind of officially released through there, we get updates for those guys. So we make sure we always have the latest, greatest version of those things because bugs creep in, right? So the idea might be if we're writing an application and we start using third-party libraries, things that we didn't write because we're going to rely on somebody else, why should we reinvent the wheel? If somebody else does something specific and we want to write something cool in our code that just leverages something that already works. Well, we might, the old school way would be download their library off GitHub, drop it into your project, and that's it. Now you're using it. Now let's say in 2 weeks they update their project for some critical bug. Well, unless you're going to go through the effort of going back to GitHub, pulling the new version of it, overwriting what's in your project, figuring out what files now got duplicated and things like that, it's going to be problematic, right? CocoaPods is a package management tool for Xcode projects specifically, hence the Cocoa. It's the Cocoa Touch, Cocoa, it's the Apple library thing, for managing third-party applications that are compatible with CocoaPods, which are a lot of them. CocoaPods is kind of the industry standard for package management for iPhone, iPad apps, that kind of stuff. If you're a Node.js programmer, it's called NPM, Node Package Manager. That's their package manager. If you're a Ruby on Rails programmer, it's called Gem. That's their package manager for installing third-party applications. So same exact thing. Python, it's called pip, P-I-P. So package management tool for managing third-party apps. Well, if you even go to the Linux side of things, this stuff's been around for years. apt-get is a package management tool for Linux. Yum is a package management tool for Linux. Yast is a package management tool for SUSE Linux.
Do not insult Yum or apt.
All right. So in any case, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to get CocoaPods installed on our machine here. I think I already have it installed on here, but just in case, I'm going to do sudo gem remove CocoaPods. Okay, so nope, do I not have CocoaPods on here already?
Is it because you're in a specific folder?
No, it's a global install. It looks like it's getting it now. I might not have had it on here. All right, so sudo says I need to run this command as the super user. So this sudo allows me to run just this one command as a super user. Gem, I mentioned it a few minutes ago, is actually a Ruby program. So all Macs have the Gem Ruby package manager on there. All right, so then I'm using that to install the CocoaPods program on my computer. So here, I got the 0.39 CocoaPods.
Are those going to be installed on the Macs in the lab?
I don't know.
You're not. We don't sudo. I want sudo.
No, we don't need sudo. We just need to get it on the Mac because you won't need to do the sudo thing again. All right. So then we need to say, okay. Then we need to say pod setup. Those two commands only have to happen once on each machine. And this basically downloads the default CocoaPods repo from GitHub and puts it into your local home directory. And once you do this, you're all set up with CocoaPods. So let that cook here for a second. All right, so now we have that. So next, I want to, where does this guy actually live? CUW dice roller, okay. So I'm gonna go into here and we're going to, I'm actually gonna steal a pod file from another place, but for now, let me just do this. I'm gonna type CD, go into Dropbox, go into CUW, go into dice roller, right there. Huh?
Is that your resume?
Yeah, it's well, this one.
No.
This is by Curriculum Vitae. This might be somebody else's, but this would be my resume. I think it's online on the department website or whatever.
Is it over?
It's not on my website.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever on
There
my
you go.
website either.
Well,
And like listed your
there's nothing on it. I'm completely inexperienced. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a file. And so what I did is I moved into the directory. So if we type ls, we see our Xcode project in here. So I'm sitting in the directory where our Xcode project is. And I'm going to go ahead and create a file in here called pod file. Okay. And I'm actually going to steal that pod file from a different just so I don't have to go look that up. All right. So first line is going to be the source thing. It's actually not required, but that's where the GitHub CocoaPods thing lives. We're choosing iOS platform 9.0. Parse requires us to use this thing called use frameworks. And then the pod we're managing here is going to be called Parse. If I want to have multiple pods inside this, I can say pod AF networking, for example, and 20 other third-party applications if I'd like. All right, but we just
link each other automatically. Like if Parse is a bunch of pods.
Yeah, it manages your entire project. You're going to see this actually modifies our Xcode project.
Right. So what I'm saying is that Parse has a bunch of dependencies and it pulls those as well.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to see it here with Parse. So now I have this pod file. So I just have a new file that sits here in that directory. And you can write this with Xcode if you want, but you want to be careful about creating your pod file with like a text editor because it might throw a .txt on the end of it, and you don't want that. So we just want a plain Jane pod file with that name, capital P. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pod install. And while that guy's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and just close this project on Xcode because we're no longer going to open up our Xcode project.
So how do you constantly get new people's usernames as your computer?
Well, I don't know. I'm important. Well, I think. Well, I don't. I think it's yeah, a bonjour thing. So this is what it did: is it downloaded Parse, but Parse requires another product called Bolts. So I went ahead and grabbed that. It's telling me that I have to close any Xcode sessions I currently have open because I'm no longer opening my project using. If I do an ls here, notice we have something new now. We used to just have our Xcode proj. Now we have this guy, our workspace. So a workspace is a collection of Xcode projects, and now we have a brand new Xcode project that was just created for us. And this Xcode project has this workspace manages 2 projects. One of them is our dice roller, the other one is pods. So I'll go ahead and open this guy. And you could double click on it in the folder as well. I'm just sitting out here, so I'll just open it there. So we see we now have our dice roller project there, and then pods is sitting down here. You don't have to even look at it, but if you ever need to edit your pod file, you can edit it in here. So we'll just keep pods closed for right now. And let's go ahead into our dice roller watch. I'm going to go to quick start. And I'm going to choose data. We'll choose mobile, iOS, Swift, new project. There's 2 ways you can do a parse project. You can do it the cool kid way, which is what we just did, using CocoaPods, or you can download their blank Xcode project template where they basically give you an Xcode project that already has the parse API built into it. But that won't get you automatic updates or anything like that. It also means that basically in perpetuity, your Xcode project is called sample parse project or parse starter project or something like that, because you can't get too much of that out. But they also mentioned the CocoaPods thing here. So we have parse installed, but now we need to let parse know about this guy. But what is kind of helpful, I'm going to go ahead and download the blank Xcode project because I'm going to steal something from it.
It's soul.
I'm going to steal its soul. There's some code that's in there that is beneficial for us to use. There's some pre-built-in stuff. All right, so I'll go ahead and open that up. I think it gives us an Objective-C and Objective-C and a Swift starter project. So I'm going to go in here, go into the starter project. I'm just going to open up this app delegate file, this guy, and I'm pretty much going to steal the entire class. And then I'm going to go into my code, into my app delegate. So this is the very first file that gets called on the iPhone side of things. There should be an equivalent over here, I would think. Extension delegate. This would be the very first guy that gets called. This is before your actual first interface controller shows up on the watch. This is like the guy who launches that first interface controller. Okay, but we're going to do this over on the phone side of things for right now. Actually, I'm just going to get rid of our entire app delegate and replace it with what I just copied, which has mostly the same stuff in it, but just with some parse crap linked in. All right. And then up top here, I have to import parse, which should now be available to me in my application. Yeah, it's still building. Workspace is built slower.
So it actually gives you the source code. It doesn't give you like a pre-built library that actually.
No, it gives us frameworks. So inside here we have Pods framework, which it's building right now.
Yeah, so it essentially builds a library.
Correct.
You don't just get well, here's what's in it. Good luck.
Well, and you don't want to. That way you can, if you ever have compile time flags, you need to have it built differently for different architectures or something for the different revisions of phones.
Well, that just means everything in CocoaPods is open source.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I mean, because you have to choose to put your project into a CocoaPods format. It's based on Git, All right, so this guy succeeded. Now there was a piece of code, I don't remember if I copied it or not, but under this quick start thing, it automatically gives me the unique application and client key for this specific app. So I'm literally just going to copy those lines from the quick start, and that will link my application to this or to this Parse project. So I'll come in here, and I'm actually going to just do it right up here. Enable local data store. So Parse actually leverages NS user defaults. So it tries to save stuff to the cloud, but if something breaks, it'll save it locally so that later on it'll just try to push it to the cloud in the event that you do get internet event again. All right, so I'll just paste the set application ID in there. I just did it up near the top of our application, did finish launching. All the rest of the stuff is fine. So at this point, our application now knows how to talk to Parse. So now we're actually going to make it talk to Parse and prove that it's working. So I'm going to come down here. This is the test the SDK. So I'm just going to highlight this code here. We'll look at it in Xcode. And I'm going to go into our, is this our first screen? Main table view controller? I think so. And let's go into view did load of this guy. So right at the beginning of view did load, we're going to go ahead and try to save something to Parse. We'll look at that code here in a second. I'm going to import Parse there. All right, so what does this guy try to do? Well, first of all, println no longer exists. One thing you'll find sometimes with Parse is that some of their Swift examples are from Swift 1.2 instead of 2.0. So sometimes you'll find some little code idiosyncrasies, let's say. But in general, it's documented very well. So we're going to create a new PF object. So this is a couple minutes ago I mentioned that object-oriented databases kind of failed, but data stores are kind of the rebranded name for object-oriented databases. So we're creating a object associated with a class named test object, and we're going to store that in a variable. Then we're going to set that test object's foo variable equal to bar. We can set other values here too, so we can say object.
So that's kind of, it's pretty much just object-oriented formatting.
Yep. So name is equal to Mike. And then we're going to go ahead and save that guy in the background. So this is an asynchronous save for those of you who are in 350 right now. And it'll say object has been saved, just printed to the screen. All right, so I'll go ahead and run this. So now when the phone app launches, it's going to create a new PF object and then try to save it to Parse using the information that we provided it about our specific application inside of here. Okay? The rest of the stuff in here, the reason I grabbed this code is it has the stuff that we might need to do like push notifications, that kind of stuff, because Parse supports all that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and just run the iPhone app. And we should, besides our stuff that shows up on the screen, we should get a little thing in our console saying object saved. Oh, am I not running the... I'm running it in the 6 Plus. Oh, it's still loading. Let me stop this. I don't run it. I want to run it in the 6 Plus. I want to run it in the 6S. Come on, you could do it. Just want to make sure this last part's recorded. Clearly it'll work. There's object has been saved there. Go into Parse. I'll go up to core for our project. Here's our test object. Name is Mike. Oh, it actually did save the other one. It just didn't, since the thing didn't launch, it didn't pop up yet. So we just saved some stuff in the cloud. Those couple of lines. All right, so for Friday, go ahead and get yourself a parse.com account and create a project for your phone app. we will want to, most of you have your own laptops and stuff. So if you have your own laptop, your own Mac at home, you can do the CocoaPod setup stuff. Otherwise, can we at least get a couple of the machines with CocoaPods? Okay. I think it should work once it's on the machine, you don't need to have super user access to use CocoaPods. But in any case, then we'll come back and we'll use this a little bit more. We're going to look at authentication screens and stuff like that. And then I'll give you an assignment over the weekend. All right. I will see everybody on Friday.